We should be good.
I'll let you know when.
Okay. As soon as he comes back on, I
We're
think
live.
we're
We're okay now. Yep.
All right. Okay. So we are returning the Wednesday, November 18th, 2020 Board of Ed meeting to regular session. Everyone, please silence your electronic devices, and we will have the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And
to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Additions and deletions to the agenda since Friday mailing. We have two, I believe, 616 and 712.
616 is an agreement, a memorandum of agreement with the RCSTA, and 7.12 is the approval of the student family support specialist positions, which are funded by a grant.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Can I get a motion to add these to the agenda? Mr. Hislop, a second. Mr. Ross, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. A motion for the acceptance of the minutes of the November 4th, 2020 BOE meeting. A motion. Mrs. Burns, a second. Mrs. Shackleton, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion's passed. Awards, honors, special presentations, we have none. Hearings and petitions for agenda items. I believe we do have one. And we are going to do our first test with someone calling in.
Yep. I'm going to dial in for the person who's asked for hearing petitions. This is Mr. Miller. And he's asked specifically to comment on... Sue, do you have the two specific ones? Well, it's on the SECRA agreement and our audit, not remediation plan, but yeah. All right, I'm going to call him in.
It's 6.10 and 6.13.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, Mr. Miller, are you there?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Hi there.
Just come off another meeting.
Gotcha.
How are you?
Excellent. You are on with the Board of Education. I'm going to put up the hearings and petitions document. We updated this at our last board meeting.
Yes, so we're going to remind people, and this is our first run with our new hearings and petitions of the 4 bullet points on our new hearings and petitions, reminding people of the 3-minute limits, and that when we were done with this information, that someone from the school district will get back to you with information. So we will turn it over to Mr. Miller.
Okay. So with that time limit, I will focus probably on the first thing then that I have for you guys tonight, which is you do have an agenda item on 6.10 tonight that is dealing with Town of Coeymans being the lead agency for the SECRA for some changes they want to make to that town code. I'm cognizant, of course, that school boards often don't like to get involved in local town type issues. This is an issue I think that our school board should be looking at very carefully. For some of the changes that they're trying to make. You may be aware that in 2019, they passed a law that it was pretty stringent air pollution control law, and or it was 2018, but the town board then subsequently down there in Coeymans got turned over, and they're looking to make significant changes to that. And these changes would essentially gut the law and allow it to expressly burn tires for fuel and to burn garbage as fuel as well. These are rather dramatic changes for a facility that sits directly across from a high school, middle school complex, and is just about 2 miles, north of Peter B and about 5 miles south of A.W. Becker, all within the sort of fallout range from that. So again, what's going to happen is there's a lot of, I won't get into all the politics around it, but the simple reality is that the dioxins and furans that will come from that tire burning can be very damaging to the pubescent and prepubescent students that we have in our schools and their development. So when you start to talk about environmental justice issues or social emotional issues, the effect on the children of our community would be very great from these changes that they want to make. So what I'm basically asking tonight is, I don't know if you can do it with the, denying or not agreeing to have them be the lead agency for SEQR, but at the very least, they have a town board meeting tomorrow night to consider these changes. And I'm hoping the town board will have, the school board, will have a good discussion about what these changes mean to our children and to the staff in these buildings as well, and to the potential health effects from that. And I would really hope that the school board would get together and make a statement not supporting these changes, in opposition to these changes, and to stick with the current law in order to protect the students of our school district. So that's really the gist of it. I'm hoping you guys will be willing to step out of your normal comfort zone with school issues, because this does dramatically affect the students of our district. That's my statement on that one. Again, they have a school board meeting tomorrow night. I keep saying getting mixed up, a town board meeting tomorrow night. So it would have to be something that happened very quickly, but I'm hoping that you guys will do that. The other one I just asked, and I guess this is one you just joined, Miranda will answer later, but in the report on extracurricular activities, there was a final finding about budgeting out disbursements and receipts for the year. And we're sort of looking for some clarification on what that means. As somebody who's been a club advisor for a long time, we've never had to make a budget before, and I'm not sure if that's what that's intimating, but again, we're looking for some clarification about that finding and the recommendation. That's my two issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reveley, for some reason, we've lost your audio.
I'm out now.
Good.
All right, we're good. Okay, so that's all we have for hearings and petitions, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I need a motion for one or all of the business considerations.
Make a motion for all 6-1 through 6-16.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Karen, do we have any discussion?
I think Mr. Miller brings up a good point of discussion. The issues around air quality and schools in the community, obviously it has existed for decades. I've only been here for 1 decade, but when I came, I certainly have heard people continue to talk about the quality of the air, specifically middle school, high school. But we watch the wind blow and we can see the different direction that the air goes when it leaves the plant across the street. So I think it is, first, it's important for our public to know that school boards, a SEQR, which is a method by which entities can appeal to the Environmental Protection Agency for changes to current status, specifically State Environmental Quality Review Act. And in speaking with our school attorney, he had said to us that in every instance, school boards do not take on sole ownership over them, but instead hand them over to other entities who are better equipped to do studies, to make decisions, to do research. And schools in general are not well suited to do that. But that doesn't mean that we can't have voice and say that we want the highest quality air for our children. at all times. And knowing that there's a town board meeting tomorrow, I personally, considering I and the board have been entrusted with the safety of our children in the district, I expect that the town is going to react not solely on an economic basis, but on a basis that protects the residents of this community, both near and far, because obviously the residual from any proposal like this could be quite far. So I hope that they seek a guarantee that whatever is going to happen there will maintain not just a minimum standard, but a standard that will continue to protect the residents of this community.
Okay. Two people that I want to call out and thank for their donations, the Greene County Bank Corp MHC and the Union Mutual Fire Insurance Company for donations to the backpack program. Is there any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, motion pass. I need a motion for one or all of the personnel considerations.
Motion for all 7-1, 7-12.
Okay, do I have a second? Mrs. Burns, do we have any discussion on any of these? No? All in favor? Aye. Motions pass. 8-1 through 8-3 are for informational items only. Special reports. I have nothing to report. Any other school board members have anything to discuss or to bring up?
We should just call out the retirements in 7-3 through 7-7.
Okay, good call with
7-8,
that.
actually.
Yes, 7-3. Board of Education accepts with regret the retirement. We have six people that we would like to congratulate with the retirement, all pending for June 30th of 2021. Thank you, Jason, for calling that out. If we have nothing else, we'll turn it over to Dr. Bailey.
For those of you that are keeping score, these last 2 weeks have been a pretty tumultuous 2 weeks for our district. After going almost 9 full weeks without a positive case, I think we've had 7 in the past 14 days. Based on the contact tracing, none of these cases have occurred or been transmitted at the school, but have come from the community. And anyone else, if you're paying attention to what's been going on in Albany County reached an all-time high of positives this past week, coming into the weekend and over the weekend. And what that has done is has put an amazing amount of stress on their existing systems. From the way it's been explained to me, and I was surprised, is Albany County deals with the initial contact. They reach out to the school or we reach out to them. But the contact tracing itself, in other words, we give them a list. For instance, in this last incident from November 4th, it took almost 6 days to get a positive result from a test of children who were symptomatic. And when we finally handed over to Albany County, they in turn handed over to the New York State Department of Health, who does contact tracing. But let's think about this in the context of Friday was 146 new cases. Our 2 cases yielded 78 people that they had to reach out to, let them know that, ask them questions, let them know they'd be placed in quarantine, and let them know when they'd be released. 78 with just our 2. There were 146 positives on Friday alone. I think the Department of Health has been overrun in their capacity to do the work that they need to do. And that's been pretty apparent because we've had children and staff members out for 14 days. They just started getting phone calls today. And it's been disheartening, confusing, disappointing, scary for these folks. So I was waiting to see if any of your phones would be ringing while we were on the meeting today, because I sent a robocall just before we started at 6 o'clock, letting the high school families know we're going to stay with students remote tomorrow as well, because our students and staff have not all been contacted yet. Even though they finished quarantine hypothetically today, they haven't been contacted. And because they're in the system with the county and the state, they ostensibly they cannot leave quarantine until they've been released by them. So I'm not faulting them. I think that literally they've been hit by a tsunami and they can't get above it right now. But it's not helpful for us as far as how we continue to do the work that we need to do. As you've noticed, every time we've had a positive case, we've notified everybody via email, phone call, and on our website. That was our promise to them. As is also our promise, we always protect the confidentiality of those people who have been identified. That has not made people feel more comfortable, but I wanted you to know that this is a part of normal practice. We're never going to identify an individual. We're not going to say sixth grade during first period on such and such a date. It's a dangerous game to play. Instead, it's important to know that the Department of Health casts a broad net. It used to be you had to be in close proximal contact, 6 feet or less for 15 minutes. Now they put entire classrooms on quarantine when there's a positive case in the classroom. So they're hedging their bet, and of course it has significantly increased the number of people in quarantine. I think as of Sunday there were 1,800 people in quarantine in Albany County, and we know that those numbers will continue to go up as there are more positive cases. So our elementary school has yet to be affected. But we do know that it is a very fragile ecosystem. I've said it over and over again. The reason why the high school is remote right now is because we have 12 staff members who cannot report to work. We can't continue to do our in-person instruction if our staff are not allowed to come to work. And the small incident at the middle school, it only involved 4 staff members, so we could continue that. But you recognize that it won't take much to make any one of our schools have to go to remote instruction. And as an update to that, well, first, do you have any questions about the completely remote or how we go back and forth between the two?
Yeah, Brian, I have a question. For the people who are a little bit confused, who have either had kids who, tested positive or were in the contact tracing group, there's been some questions about, when do their kids get to go back? They're just not sure. They haven't heard. If they have these kinds of questions, who's the best person for them to contact?
Great question. We did something different because the cohort group was so large this time. We sent a blanket email and phone call to the affected families. Based on some of the dialogue with families since then, we're going to create a hotline number so people can call. As of right now, we encourage them to call their main office of their building. That's the sensible thing to do, and they'll give them the best information. But when we have a cohort of 60, 70, 80 students, we're going to include with that a phone number that people can call. As if, for instance, we sent out a blanket communication, but if you have more than one child in the high school, you don't necessarily know which of your children has been affected, and that's not okay. So I would encourage folks right now to call their main office, Yvonne, if they have questions about it. But I'll tell you that no one is capable of returning if they've been placed on quarantine until the Albany County Department of Health or the Department of Health has released them. Someone sent me a version of what that looks like. The placement in quarantine is very official. It reads like an executive order. It is maybe 12 or 14 whereas. It's very official. It's very difficult to read. That's what it looks like when you're placed in quarantine. The release is official as well, and they can produce that and show the school. I think our high school health office received 6 today. Out of the 66 kids who've been placed in quarantine, we received 6 confirmations of release. That cohort wouldn't have been physically in session tomorrow, but if they had been, only 6 of them could have returned at this point.
Hey, Brian, one of the things, I had mentioned before, we're sending these emails out to families. So if kids, and right now we're only doing one school, if we set this hotline up where we're sending an email out that's generic and people have 3 kids in the high school, it doesn't specify which kid's in quarantine. So are they going to be able to call this number to find out which one of their kids would be in quarantine?
Yep. And what'll happen is they'll call and leave a message and we'll call them right back. We want to create a repository so that there's a place where they can record their questions. Interestingly, I know I answered a couple questions. People reached right out to me after I sent the message on Friday to asking which one of my children is it. And I think the high school question was a question about the day of the exposure, the one question that they got on Friday. But having a place for people to get answers. And to be honest, when you call the Department of Health right now, you're almost always getting a voicemail. You're not getting the answers that you need. Instead, you have to leave a message and get a call back. Our service will be a little bit better because we're not dealing with thousands. We're just dealing with our own students.
Well, I think it's important because that email we're getting from school seems like the communication we're going to receive. Like the health department, like you said, we're 14 days away, and some people in that 65 or 66, only 6 got releases. Some of those families haven't even been contacted by the health department yet, so they can't even get releases. They haven't got contacted the first time.
That's correct. One of our staff members got a call at 2 o'clock today, and at 2:10 she received her release. So in other words, she was placed in quarantine at 2. She was released at 2:10. The other thing that we know, and I don't know that it played a role in this, is remember the exposure was 2 weeks ago. We had a confirmation of the positives at the end of last week. It is conceivable that the Department of Health prioritized people who were exposed on Friday. And they said, these people were exposed 9-10 days ago. We're not going to bother making them a priority. I don't really know what their mindset was, but it has not been productive so far. It's also important for you to know that similar to like crisis response teams in the building, when we have a positive case that requires any kind of attention in the district, we have a COVID action team that meets. It's made up of different representations from throughout the district and the building leaders and the nurse from the building that's affected. And from that, we follow a script. We follow various steps to make sure that we've contact traced directly and we've contacted all the people that we need to in order to get to where we need to go. We've had a chance to practice it 3 times so far. We're getting better at it each time. But at least we don't want to practice it. We don't want to do it at all. And in all honesty, I just sent out an email to all the families that was pretty weighty. It talked about responsible behaviors beyond school. In other words, we are wearing masks in school, social distancing, and doing hand washing. Are you allowing your child to go play pickup basketball at 4 o'clock in the afternoon at the town park? If they're doing that, they are not practicing those things, and that's where they're, potentially exposed. We got to be conscientious throughout. It's the only way to drive down the numbers in the county. We want people to do the attestation every day that their child's supposed to be in school, even if their child is at home. That's another great way for us to know what our numbers look like and people's health. And we also send out travel advisories because the New York State just changed their travel advisories. We used to require quarantine for 14 days. Now they're allowing you to test before and after your trip. I will tell you, though, that guidance came out just a couple weeks ago, and it's likely to change because our numbers are spiking. Massachusetts, for instance, no longer recognizes us as a safe state, so now you got to test if you're going to go into Massachusetts. So we're not looking good. New York is not looking very good right now. But again, our primary tenet is we want to stay open for in-person instruction so that our students get the best quality education they can get. which is why we're defaulting to being open. As long as we can ensure the safety of our staff and students, we're going to stay open. We're going to fight to stay open as long as we can. In preparation for closing, we've had a lot of discussions about elementary school, what our thoughts are about how they're going to be prepared. We have the Thanksgiving break, and then we're coming back, and we have a couple half-day parent conference days, December 1st and 2nd. And our hope is to practice a fully remote day on at least one of those days. So in other words, our elementary kids will be home. They'll have their devices at home. And families will have an opportunity to see what it's like to have their elementary students, K through 4, work remotely for the first time. We've ordered cases, and we expect them to be in prior to that date. And in prep for some of the things that we know are going to be forthcoming, we've also ordered an additional 180 document cameras for our staff. They've mentioned that having a document camera while they're working from home has been extremely helpful. We have about 100 second monitors prepared for our staff if they need it for their instruction at home. And we obviously have already distributed devices to our teachers so they can work from home. With the inclement weather, we've kind of made the statement already that in the event that we're unable to open school because of bad weather, last night I had 3 inches of snow, and if we do have to close, there's a great likelihood we will flip right over to remote instruction as we move forward. But what we're going to do is we're going to share out with the entire school community what our plans are so that families are prepared for that. They know that if it looks like between the hours of 5 and 7 the roads are impassable, we will likely go to remote instruction. Students will stay at home, and here's the schedule that they're going to follow. We want to be able to share out specifically what it'll look like because our elementary families don't have any experience with it yet, and they'll have to learn some things. Do you have any questions about closure, potential closure? The only other thing I want to talk about is yearbook. We've done a yearbook in every building every year since we were in school. As you can conceptualize, yearbooks are a visual or a pictorial representation of the activities and the pursuits of our children. This is a very awkward time to grab pictorial representation of what students are doing. I don't know that we're going to be able to produce yearbooks in a traditional sense for our students. You know, and I will let you know also, because we're having discussions, especially the secondary level, the cost of a formal yearbook, which is a bound book with color or black and white pages in it, the price skyrockets the fewer the copies that are made available for sale. And people right now are being very conservative in their approach to whether or not they want to purchase things like that. Like a high school yearbook is $30 to $50. We're not sure we're going to be able to produce a yearbook in its traditional sense. We may end up with like online versions of stuff rather than printed. We may, as a for instance, last year when we closed early, some of the buildings solicited families and asked them to submit pictures, and what they ended up with is like 10 families with 200 pictures and then nothing from everyone else. Very difficult to produce something that's meaningful to everybody in that. But I want to let you guys know that that's going to be a real challenge for us, because it's something that we want, like a prom or a traditional graduation. We want it because that's the experience we had. I don't know that we're going to be able to produce that this year.
So Brian, just a quick question with regards to that. Produce it at all, or just you don't think that there'll be enough interest to actually make it meaningful to produce it?
I personally think it's important for us to produce something. What I don't think is, I don't think it's going to be a print edition of something like that. We have significantly fewer clubs. We have little or no athletics. There's just the content is lacking. So I think we should make the memories that we can this year. But I don't know it's going to be in print and abound and sold for, for a $20, $30, $40, $50 amount of money.
Brian, I hear what you're saying, and I do understand it, but I'm wondering if we have enough time to maybe think of something that can be done for the seniors in a print version. It'd be really sad to send them off with an online version of their yearbook.
Yeah.
Brian, did we see that our regions canceled this year?
January regions have been canceled. No word on June as yet. And similar to what they did in June of last year, they sent out all kinds of guidance of what would happen to a child if in the event they were supposed to be taking it in January as a graduation requirement.
So do we pay for regions?
We pay for the scoring sheet. So in January, it's a significantly smaller amount. Let's say maybe we offer 60 Regents exams to students in January. It's not a lot.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if we're saving in some areas, could we potentially leverage the money that we're saving in Regents, offset something that we could do for yearbooks, even for the senior class? Because I think that's the first one that I would be concerned about, is those outgoing seniors, making sure that they have something and offering something to them. But it's just trying to be creative in reutilizing things that we do right now, just thinking outside the box.
That's a great point. Yeah, the other thing, I know Dr. Paterni and Mr. Tedford, with the student government, they're involving the seniors in making decisions like this. So I think their voice in this would be very important.
I think that's a good idea to get them involved, the students.
There's two sides to it, though. We as parents definitively want something for our children. And then our children want something too. But we always say, whenever I did graduation, I clearly told all the kids, this is your parents' day. You're there. You're going to walk across the stage. You're all dressed up. But this is for your parents. So I think that we need to meet the both. What the kids want may be different than parents, but parents will definitively want something for their kiddos.
Yeah, so if we could maybe keep this on new business or something, think about how we can talk about doing something. I think that would be great to continue the conversation.
Yeah, great. And the planning really needs to be now through January. That's where we get the meat and potatoes. And if we close, of course, what I've told anybody who is thinking about doing yearbook, I said, go out and take 10,000 pictures now, everything you can conceive of, so we can create something from whatever it is that we have. But I'm with you. We got to make the decision sooner than later.
Okay, are we good? Moving on to Mr. Engelhardt.
Just three things to add to Dr. Bailey. I wanted October 21st, we had a parent address the board regarding her concerns for fifth grade specials. Ms. McLaughlin and Ms. McClave and our administrators for coming up with the best case scenario. So at this point, we're able to give our fifth graders fully in-person music, a lot of art with the oversight with Mr. Meservey. And then the concern really was around PE and giving our students who are sitting for so long the opportunity to get some physical activities in. So we still have to stream in our PE teachers in the elementary school, but we've worked with Ms. McClave in getting them to be able to go to the gym, to stay like area when the weather is good enough to go outside, they go outside as well. So I think that is going to be where we are now. We're going to continue to look at numbers. Special area teachers were considering actually traveling, but with the spike and with what Leonie mentioned in the summer. We really want to minimize as much movement around the district as possible. So best case scenario, it's not perfect yet, but we continue to work on it, and I just wanted to give that update. The other thing is, many of you know that we are using a program. It's a character education. The middle school had a huge virtual assembly kickoff this past Monday, which also allowed our complete remote instruction students to participate. A lot of positive feedback from the middle school PTSO, and actually they're going to join them at their next assembly, so they're really excited about that. And then lastly, our instructional leaders have been trying to really think of different ways to get feedback from students and from families around their experiences. So this past week, they decided to do some focus groups. They're actually virtual focus groups, obviously, but they're going to start meeting with students and parents and other stakeholders just to kind of talk through and ask questions around their experience. Because we're noticing, just like in the spring, we have various levels of engagement from students. So we want to make sure that we're hearing their voices. Also what, different things that teachers are facing as well, and what parents are facing at home. So more to come on that.
Fred, I just have one question for you. Sorry. I know that we had talked about substitute teachers and some of the issues that we were facing. I was wondering where we stood on that. Were teachers able to do things like Google Meets and things? Have we figured that out?
So for substitutes for complete remote instruction, because of account and all of the privacy, we landed on if a teacher who's a complete remote instructor is out, that just like they do subplans, they need to create asynchronous activities for the students for the day, because we just can't at this point have substitutes go on accounts. So that's where we are at this point. For teachers who are doing in-person or hybrid, if their substitutes are able to come in, we use our traditional substitute kind of process for that.
You kind of broke up there a little bit. I don't know if it was me. And I get that. I understand it. But to have elementary students do complete asynchronous, it's kind of tough, without any guidance. They get into a schedule, they look for the Google Meets. Again, the only reason why I know this is because I've lived it. I feel like maybe there's more that we could do there. I would love to help out and try any way I could. I don't know what the quick answer is, but I feel like that's something that we might need to jump into a little bit more, making sure everybody's getting a fair shake.
Sure. Let me, what I'll do, Pete, is I'll reach out to Ms. Can you hear me okay?
No, you're breaking up. I don't know if it's just me or yeah, you're breaking up a little. That's fine. If you want to, email me or whatever, say it again, whatever you got to do.
Mr. Engelhardt, if you turn off your video, I think it'll help. He has been experiencing some internet issues from home. So.
It's a better picture of him anyway.
All right. We'll turn it over to Mrs. Moran on that one.
I have budget timeline under my name today, and we've been working on a lot of things. We've been already working on the budget, but we wanted to do, Dr. Bailey and I wanted to open it up to a discussion from the board. It's now I'm going into, I don't know, my 5th budget season with Ravena. So I kind of want to, where do we want to go? How do you see, Dr. Bailey and I have talked about doing a committee, getting community members, stakeholders, staff members, to do a budget committee and maybe identify it into a smaller group from the Board of Education, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members. It doesn't matter. But what do you guys want? I just want to know what you want from the budget presentation process. Sometimes you say more meetings, less meetings. So I thought we could have a conversation so I can deliver on what you guys would like and expect. Or we can, I shouldn't say.
I'll tell you what Joanne and I were thinking is that we do have a smaller steering committee of 2 or 3 board members plus some constituents from our community. That includes staff from our buildings, community members who are family, and maybe taxpayers. Small group though, the 20, 25 or less. And that the presentations that we've ordinarily given within the context of board meeting, we actually give within the context of these steering committee meetings. And the presentation will be shared with the board, with the public afterward. But the committee is able to do the heavy lifting, make some decisions around our mission, vision, and goals for the district. And what's delivered to the board when we get into February and March is a finished product of what we believe to be the most important things. I was on a call today with superintendents from across the state. We'll let you know that the approach that every district who's sensible is taking is a zero-based budget. That means that we start from absolutely nothing. In other words, we decide what it is are essential. So we list out and include those things that are our essentials. Then we go to the things that we believe are would be nice, and then those things that we believe would be our dreams, what we really want if we could have anything we wanted. And we prioritize in that manner because we've talked about the forecast for budgets in New York State with the diminishing of state and federal funding, that we're going to be facing some difficult times. Although RCS is positioned uniquely, potentially better than many other districts, we need to be stewards for the next 5 to 10 years, not just for the next year. And we want to make sure that we are unquestionably committing our money to the most important things that are going to make the greatest changes for our students. So small group, focused presentations, making decisions, and bringing them to the board as we roll into the new year. What do you guys think?
Brian, I don't know if others would feel the same way, but I think flexibility is something that I would look to see in the budgeting process as we move forward, because there's 2 different potential models of what education will look like next year, right? One that's very in person because vaccine works, everything is starting to return to normal, and one where it's still unsettled, where we have to do a model where we're focused more on, virtual learning, things like that. So I would love to see us think about things different ways. So I think we would spend money differently depending upon the model that we choose.
Mm-hmm.
Still would be the same mission, right? I think you would still have the same end goals, which is educating kids and making the right choices with regard to how we would like to educate them, and then dispersing funds in order to facilitate that.
Yeah, and boy, we are learning a lot. In the last 8 months, we've learned a lot about how to try and deliver on our promise with these new confines.
One of the things I was thinking of, just trying to minimize the amount of time we spend on the budget, is focusing on what the big changes are, what the important things are. Sometimes I use an example of, maybe Doug Porter and the food division. We usually don't have a lot of change there. Are we going to have a minimal increase in cost? Yeah, maybe a few $100s, a few $1,000, but there's not a lot of decision making. We still have to have a cafeteria and food. Sometimes I don't think we need to spend any time or much time at all when it comes to items like that, versus something when we say, we want to add a new science teacher and I need $100,000, then those are the kind of things I think that we need to pull out and have discussion on that are important. Not that it's all not important, it's all important, but we want kind of the top items for discussion is what I'd like to see, because I think we do a lot of repetitive stuff week after week, going over things that haven't changed and things we have no control over. So I just think the bigger items is what we want to focus on, or the items of big change.
The other thing that Joanne and I openly accept is that what we're proposing is complex in this virtual world that we're in. We've done forums before. We've had people come in. We've done focus groups. We've done a lot of things. In person is very different than trying to host a meeting with a large group of people. We've talked about the challenge of that. So what's the right thing to do in this moment versus what might be the right moment to do when everything is back to what we've traditionally known? We may not be able to do the things that we're talking about, to be able to have a group of people meet, invite larger public and community. Maybe it's better served by doing surveys and then filtering that with a group of people who can focus on the most important work that needs to get done.
Okay. You guys need anything else from us? Anybody else have any other input or questions? If you need any board members, I can volunteer people that have their mics off and can't say no. So.
Got it.
Hey, man, I always talk.
Okay. Joanne, we all set then?
Yep.
Okay. So new business, anyone have any new business to discuss?
So for new business, the governor put out these mandates a while ago saying that schools would have to close at certain percentages. When we hit this certain percentage number, a school could possibly have to close. What does that look like right now? I know Albany County is approaching 5%. I don't know how long it needs to be there. Is that a magic number that we'd have to close? Is that something that is still determined based on the school district themselves? Or when do we lose our power to make those decisions ourselves?
It's kind of a convolution of the two things. He, back in the summertime, said 5 and 9% were the magic numbers. And since then, he's introduced the yellow, orange, and red zones. And the first thing that would happen is the county would go into a yellow zone. What that would require of us, and thankfully, they just sent an adjustment to original regulation on schools. It originally had said that if a school is in a yellow zone, you'd have to test 20% of your staff every week. Sorry, 20% of your population every week, which for us would mean about 380 people every week, with no promise of how they'd be able to deliver us those tests or how we're going to execute that. They came out with adjusted expectations just on Friday or Saturday, which now says if we move to a yellow zone, which, Jason, you're right, we're about to move by our numbers, we're probably about to move into the yellow zone. We instead are required to test 20% of our population in a 2-week window. And if we demonstrate that our population is below what the zone numbers are, we don't have to test anymore. Before, we would have to do it consistently. Now, if we just demonstrate that we are not the problem, we don't have to continue to test. That being said, they haven't explained to us how we're going to test, how they're going to deliver the tests. And I will be totally frank with you, it's the paperwork that would undo us. It isn't the testing. A testing and a swab takes moments. But you can't do more than 4 tests an hour in those rapid test machines. It takes 15 minutes for the machine to recalibrate. That means on any given day, you might be able to do 20 to 28 tests. We need to test 380 people. So there's one problem. If we go to orange or red, the only way we would be able to stay open is if every person in attendance was tested and tested negative. And you understand the equity issues of that. And as of right now, I just happen to go into the rapid testing, which happens to be at the Walgreens on Holland Avenue. And of course, people are preparing to travel for Thanksgiving. There are no appointments available. You can't get an appointment. So there are some requirements set in place. They have. We had a call with Dr. Whalen last week. Even she could not assert. They're partnering with us, but they could not assert how schools are going to accomplish the task. So what it will probably end up doing is it will cause us to go fully remote until we've been able to problem solve what the issues are.
Yeah, that was kind of my follow-up question. It seems like they backed us into a corner saying, okay, you can test and you can kind of keep school running, but fundamentally, it's impossible to get through the testing. It would be impossible for us to get the results back. So it's kind of backed us into that complete remote instruction kind of without question, and then even then getting those tests done by the time we get the results back, I think we'd be complete remote instruction for an extended period of time, and knowing how the numbers keep rising, we'd probably be in the orange and red anyway at that point. So it seems inevitable that most likely we have to do this. So the second part would be, if we did that, would it be everybody is on complete remote, or would the staff still be reporting to the building? Because I know we've kind of separated those two things as well, right? So student population can stay out, staff is required to go in. What does that look like, as we go through these different, colors from the governor?
If we were to close the entire district, let's rewind back to March. In March, he shut down New York State. He put a travel ban, an internal travel ban in place, essentially saying that unless you're an essential employee, and it was clearly defined, it was first responders and truckers and things like that, no one was to travel. We closed our buildings because we weren't supposed to be on the road and we weren't supposed to be in buildings. I think that the state is smarter, faster about that kind of stuff right now. I don't think that it would be the same level of shutdown. If we had to close the entire district to in-person instruction, we would allow our staff to come into work and do their work if they chose to. We have people who don't have as viable bandwidth at home, or it's just easier for them to work at work. I think if we close the entire district, we would allow our staff to stay at home and keep the buildings open for people who chose to come in, unless the governor said no one can travel. Right now, we just have our high school and our students in person. We've asked that they come in with the exception of people who are in quarantine or those that have a medical condition that preempts them from coming in. But if it were the entire district, we would be very different in our approach about that.
Okay. Anybody else have any other new business to bring up? Any of these old business items? Anyone have anything to discuss? Building and Grounds Committee meeting minutes. Anything for you guys to discuss with your committee meeting?
Do we have the picture of the Frankenstein machine, Dr. Bailey? You don't have the picture? There's a highlight. The highlight.
Hold on. Let me see if I can find it.
Attaboy.
Frankenstein.
Some good ingenuity going on down at the Building and Grounds.
I forgot about that.
No, I didn't.
That's right.
I still want to go in business and start making them.
It was awesome.
Wow. The suspense is killing me.
We can always save it for next meeting,
All right. Well, we'll move on to policy while Dr. Bailey looks for it. I need a motion. We're on second reading for policy. Need a motion for one or all. Looks like we have 48. I need a motion. All. All right, we'll just go all. Okay. Mrs. Burns, Mr. Engel, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. So we passed the policies. Hearings and petitions. We have no other hearings and petitions. Upcoming activities. Our next BOE meeting will be December 2nd, 2020, and will be remote, I'm sure. Dr. Bailey, you have that picture of Frankenstein? Or
I'm working on it. I'm so close.
I can't find it.
We can end on that.
I have the agenda. I'm just trying to see if the link is in there. Oh, it's not.
No.
Teddy, did you say motion to adjourn?
Well, we were waiting for Frankenstein. Then I was going to do, motion to adjourn.
I don't have it.
All right.
I can't find mine.
Let's wait
Sorry.
for it
We'll have
till
it for
the
next
second.
meeting.
All right.
All right. Motion to adjourn. Mrs. Burns, Mr. Ross, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy
Yeah.
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.